The invitation arrived on expensive cream paper, embossed with gold lettering that screamed luxury. You're cordially invited to Shakira's charity gala for Latin American children. Caroline Levitt stared at the invitation in her White House office, her silver cross necklace catching the afternoon light streaming through the window. It's a trap, her communications director Emma warned, pacing behind Caroline's desk. Why would Shakira invite you? She's been throwing shade at conservative politics for months. Karoline folded the invitation carefully, her expression unreadable. Maybe she wants to have a real conversation about helping children instead of just posting about it on Instagram. But deep down, Karoline knew Emma was right. This wasn't about charity. This was about optics, about getting the youngest White House press secretary in history on camera with one of Latin America's biggest stars, probably to make her look out of place or naive. The gala was set for Miami Beach at Shakira's private oceanfront mansion. A-list celebrities, politicians, and media moguls would be there, the kind of crowd that usually made conservative voices feel unwelcome. If you're going, Emma said, you need to be prepared for anything. Karoline opened her laptop and began typing. For the next 3 hours, she researched everything she could find about Shakira's recent business ventures, her charity work, and her connections throughout Latin America. What she found made her pause. There were gaps, large financial gaps in the charity's public records. Donations that seemed to disappear into shell companies. And most interesting of all, a pattern of events and concerts in cities that just happened to be major drug trafficking routes. Emma, Karoline called out, her voice steady but focused, get me everything you can on the Pais Descalzos Foundation. I want financial records, board members, and every single project they've funded in the last 5 years. Emma raised an eyebrow. You think there's something there? Karoline's fingers drummed against her desk, a habit she'd developed when pieces of a puzzle were starting to come together. I think Shakira didn't invite me to talk about helping children. She invited me because someone told her to. The question was who and why. As Karoline boarded the plane to Miami the next morning, she carried with her a leather folder containing documents that would either prove her suspicions wrong or change everything. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, she would be standing on a stage, reading aloud information that would bring down one of the world's biggest pop stars. The plane descended toward Miami International Airport, and Karoline could see the glittering coastline below. Somewhere down there, Shakira was preparing for what she thought would be a simple photo opportunity with a young, inexperienced politician. She had no idea what was coming. The mansion was even more extravagant than Karoline had imagined. Palm trees swayed in the ocean breeze, and the sound of waves mixed with the gentle hum of conversation from the world's elite. Shakira's home was a fortress of glass and marble, with every detail designed to impress and intimidate. Karoline stepped out of her black SUV wearing a navy blue dress and her signature silver cross. She looked professional, composed, but not trying to compete with the glamour around her. That was intentional. Karoline! Shakira's voice rang out across the marble foyer, her Colombian accent warm and welcoming. The pop star glided toward her in a flowing white gown, arms outstretched for an embrace. I'm so honored you could make it. The cameras flashed immediately. This was the shot they wanted, the conservative politician and the liberal pop star, appearing to bridge divides for charity. Thank you for inviting me, Karoline replied, accepting the embrace but keeping her expression neutral. I'm always interested in learning about efforts to help children. Shakira's smile was perfect, practiced. Come, let me introduce you to some people. For the next hour, Karoline was paraded around the party like a trophy. Celebrities posed with her for photos, made small talk about finding common ground, and generally treated her like an interesting novelty. She smiled politely, answered questions about policy, and all the while observed. She noticed how certain guests seemed to defer to a man in an expensive suit who stayed in the shadows. She saw how Shakira's assistant kept checking her phone nervously, and she observed how the conversation always seemed to steer away from specific details about where the charity money actually went. Ladies and gentlemen, Shakira announced, tapping a champagne glass with a silver spoon. If I could have your attention, please. The crowd gathered around a small stage that had been set up near the pool. The Miami skyline glittered in the background, creating a perfect backdrop for what was supposed to be an inspiring speech about helping disadvantaged children. Tonight, we celebrate not just charity, but unity, Shakira began, her voice carrying easily across the crowd. We have with us someone who represents a different political perspective, but who I believe shares our commitment to children. Karoline felt the spotlight literally and figuratively shift to her. This was the moment she'd been expecting. Karoline Levitt, would you join me on stage? The applause was polite but measured. Karoline walked up the steps, her leather folder tucked discreetly under her arm. She had a choice to make: play along with the scripted unity moment or do what she came here to do. Shakira handed her the microphone with a confident smile. Please tell us about your work for children. Karoline took the microphone, looked out at the crowd of celebrities and power brokers, and made her decision. Thank you, Shakira. I do care deeply about children, which is why I spent the last 48 hours researching your foundation. The smile on Shakira's face flickered for just a moment. In the crowd, phones started coming out, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. And what I found, Karoline continued, opening her folder, raises some very serious questions. The atmosphere at the party shifted instantly. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the ocean breeze seemed to quiet as Karoline opened her folder under the bright stage lights. Shakira's smile remained frozen in place, but her eyes had gone cold. Karoline, this is a charity event. Perhaps we could discuss... The Pies Descalzos Foundation, Karoline interrupted, her voice clear and steady, claims to have built 200 schools across Latin America. But according to Colombian Education Ministry records, only 47 of those schools actually exist. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones were now openly recording. This wasn't going according to anyone's script. Where did the other $50 million go? Karoline asked, looking directly at Shakira. The pop star's composure cracked slightly. Those are complex international projects. There are always administrative costs. Administrative costs don't explain why your foundation's largest donor is a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. Karoline continued, flipping to another page. A company that, according to DEA financial tracking reports, has been flagged for suspicious transactions with known cartel, money laundering operations. The crowd gasped. Several celebrities started moving toward the exits, clearly not wanting to be associated with whatever was unfolding. Shakira grabbed for the microphone. This is ridiculous. You're making wild accusations. But Karoline stepped back, keeping the mic. I'm reading from official documents. Would you like me to continue? The man in the expensive suit who had been lurking in the shadows was now pushing through the crowd, speaking urgently into a phone. Security guards appeared at the edges of the party, but they seemed confused about whether to intervene. Your concerts in Medellin, Cali, and Barranquilla over the past 3 years, Karoline read from another document, coincided exactly with major cocaine shipment schedules, according to intercepted cartel communications. The same cartels that donated to your foundation through those shell companies. Shakira's face had gone pale beneath her makeup. You don't understand how business works in Latin America. I understand how money laundering works, Karoline replied. And I understand that while you've been lecturing Americans about social justice, you've been taking blood money from the people destroying communities across Latin America. The crowd was in chaos now. Reporters were shouting questions, celebrities were fleeing, and somewhere in the distance, sirens could be heard approaching. Shakira made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Even if some of this were true, which it isn't, what gives you the right to come into my home and the same right that gives you the platform to influence millions of people? Karoline shot back. The difference is, I'm telling the truth. She held up a final document. This is a wire transfer record showing $15 million moving from your personal account to a known cartel front company just 6 months ago. The same month you posted on social media about fighting corruption in government. The sirens were getting closer. The man in the expensive suit was now running toward a speedboat docked behind the mansion, and Shakira, the woman who had built an empire on her image as a socially conscious artist, stood exposed under the Miami stars. But Karoline wasn't finished yet. The FBI agents arrived just as Karoline was reading the final document. Black SUVs surrounded the mansion while helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the Miami night. The party had transformed from a glamorous charity gala into a crime scene in less than 30 minutes. "This is Agent Rodriguez, FBI Financial Crimes Division," a stern woman in a dark suit announced as she approached the stage. "We need everyone to remain calm and stay where you are." Shakira's legs seemed to give out. She sank into a chair that someone quickly brought to the stage, her perfect composure completely shattered. The woman who had commanded stages in front of hundreds of thousands of fans now looked small and defeated. "How?" she whispered, looking up at Karoline with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "How did you know?" Karoline closed her folder and looked down at the fallen pop star. "Because unlike you, I actually read the documents before I signed them, and I have people who care more about truth than photo opportunities." Agent Rodriguez approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this investigation has been ongoing for 18 months. Tonight's events have provided the final pieces of evidence we needed." The crowd of celebrities and politicians stood in stunned silence. Many were already calculating how to distance themselves from Shakira, how to explain their presence at what was now clearly a money laundering operation disguised as charity. "The Paz Descalzos Foundation," Agent Rodriguez continued, "has been used to launder approximately $200 million in cartel money over the past 5 years. Ms. Shakira, Isabella Rapol, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, tax evasion, and providing material support to criminal organizations." As the handcuffs clicked around Shakira's wrists, she looked up at Karoline one more time. "You have no idea what you've done. The people I work with don't forgive. They don't forget." Karoline stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "Neither do the families of the people killed by the cartels you've been funding. Neither do the children who never got the schools you promised to build with their money." The cameras captured every moment as Shakira was led away. The woman who had sung about truth and justice, who had lectured world leaders about corruption, was now facing life in prison for the very crimes she had publicly condemned. But as the FBI agents escorted Shakira toward their vehicles, Karoline noticed something that made her blood run cold. The man in the expensive suit who had been trying to escape earlier was now standing at the edge of the property, talking on his phone and staring directly at her. He wasn't running anymore. He was planning. Emma appeared at Karoline's side, her face pale with concern. "We need to get you out of here." "Now." "Why?" Karoline asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because Shakira wasn't the only one involved in this operation, and the people above her in the food chain just watched you destroy their entire money laundering network on live television." As they walked quickly toward their SUV, Karoline could feel eyes watching her from the shadows. She had exposed one of the biggest celebrity money laundering operations in history, but she had also just made herself a target of some of the most dangerous people in the world. The real question was, would she make it home alive? 6 months later, Karoline stood in the Rose Garden of the White House, addressing a crowd of reporters and law enforcement officials. The investigation that had started with Shakira's arrest had grown into the largest entertainment industry corruption probe in history. "Operation Reggaeton has resulted in 47 arrests across 6 countries, she announced, reading from prepared remarks. "We've recovered over $300 million in stolen charity funds and dismantled a money laundering network that was processing nearly $2 billion annually for various criminal organizations." The list of arrested celebrities read like a who's who of Latin entertainment. Reggaeton stars, pop singers, actors, and even several prominent social media influencers. All had been using fake charities and shell companies to clean cartel money while building their public images as socially conscious artists. "The most important outcome," Karoline continued, "is that the recovered funds are now being used for their intended purpose. We've built 127 new schools, provided clean water to 89 communities, and established legitimate healthcare programs across Latin America." A reporter from Univision raised her hand. "Ms. Levitt, critics say you targeted Latino artists unfairly. How do you respond to accusations of racial profiling?" Karoline's expression remained calm but firm. "Corruption has no race, no nationality, and no genre of music. We followed the money, not demographics. The investigation included artists of all backgrounds who were participating in these criminal networks. What she didn't mention publicly was the personal cost of her actions. Since that night at Shakira's mansion, Karoline had been living under federal protection. The cartels had put a price on her head, and several attempts had been made to intimidate or harm her family. But the results spoke for themselves. Shakira was now serving a 25-year sentence in federal prison. Her mansion, cars, and jewelry had been seized and sold, with the proceeds going to legitimate charities. Her music had been removed from most streaming platforms, and her record label had collapsed under the weight of the scandal. "There's something else I want to address," Karoline said, her voice taking on a more personal tone. "That night, Shakira mocked my faith. She called my beliefs outdated and irrelevant." She paused, touching her silver cross necklace. "But it was precisely because of my faith that I couldn't stay silent when I saw people being hurt. My beliefs didn't make me weak or naive. They gave me the strength to stand up to corruption, even when it was dangerous." The crowd of reporters leaned in, sensing that this was more than just a policy statement. "Faith without action is meaningless," Karoline continued, "but action without moral foundation is just politics." What happened that night wasn't about religion versus secularism. It was about right versus wrong. A young reporter from a Puerto Rican newspaper stood up. "Ms. Levitt, many young Latinos looked up to Shakira as a voice for their community. How do you think this affects their trust in public figures?" Karoline's expression softened. "I hope it teaches them to look beyond the image and examine the actions. Real leadership isn't about having the most followers or the catchiest songs. It's about using your influence to actually help people, not exploit them." She pulled out one final document, a letter written in Spanish by a young girl from Puerto Rico whose school had been built with the recovered charity funds. "This letter is from Isabella, age 12, from Bayamon," Karoline read, translating as she went. She writes, "Thank you for making sure our school got built. Shakira promised us a library, but you gave us a whole education. My faith in God is stronger because I saw that good people still fight for what's right." Karoline folded the letter carefully. "That's why we do this work. Not for headlines or political points, but for Isabella and thousands of children like her who deserve leaders who actually keep their promises." As the press conference ended, Karoline reflected on how much had changed since that confrontational night in Miami. Shakira's empire had crumbled, but something more important had been built in its place: accountability. The entertainment industry had been forced to confront its role in money laundering and corruption. New regulations required transparency in celebrity charitable foundations, and young people across Latin America had learned that their heroes should be judged by their actions, not their social media presence. Most importantly, the investigation had sent a clear message to criminal organizations. Using celebrities and fake charities to clean drug money would no longer be tolerated, regardless of how famous or influential the perpetrators might be. Karoline walked back toward the White House, her silver cross catching the afternoon sunlight. She had been mocked for her faith, threatened for her courage, and criticized for her methods. But she had also helped recover hundreds of millions of dollars for people who desperately needed it. As she often told young people who asked for advice, "Don't let anyone tell you that having principles makes you weak. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply tell the truth." The man who had once sung "I do what I want" was now learning that actions have consequences. And the young woman who wore her faith proudly had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption isn't a gun or a badge. It's the courage to speak truth to power, no matter how famous or dangerous that power might be.